righty. So I watch a lot of stuff. I try not to judge based on, you know, I try not to judge based on what other people are saying, because other people have opinions on everything, and you really don't know for sure what you're dealing with until you hear it from someone directly. So there's these guys, fresh and fit, and they're called misogynists. And this guy Myron actually has a book called Why Women Deserve Less. So I guess there's a case to be made there. But I think that while I don't agree with everything this guy says, I think he does make a lot of good points. And the reason that these people are popular in their age demographic is because they're kind of telling hard truths that a lot of people aren't. So this is exactly the part of the conversation I was looking for. So he's advocating for bringing back bullying. So listen to this for a minute.
How many close friends do you have? Do you know your neighbor across the street, what their situation is? Do you know your neighbors on the other side of you? Would you trust one of them to take care of your dog if you're out of town? We've also become...
So let me move back a little bit more even. So what they're talking about here is social media's effect on the youth, and how we've kind of become detached from each other. And I think this is a really relevant, even though these guys are a little bit to the right, and PBD does a great show, but there's times when I'm kind of like, when I don't necessarily agree with everything he's saying, but he does a great job of curating guests that are across the spectrum and asking really good questions. And you can tell that he's an honest character. He's an honest actor. He's someone who has integrity, and his views can be changed. I think it's the same reason I respect someone like Joe Rogan so much, because he has kind of a thirst for knowledge, and you can tell by the people he has on his show that that's what his MO is.
In sunlight exposure. And there's a couple of great programs that were like the challenge, like 60-day programs. And part of that program is 60 minutes outside, taking a walk around lunch, brisk walk, getting sunlight. So all of this is coming together. And what Myron just said is dead on. What's happening, on porn that's even worse is it objectifies women and it perfects women. It's like...
Now listen, I am not by any stretch of the word anti-porn, and I do not have views as extreme as these guys do, but I do think that they make some valid points, and I do think that porn and the access to it conditions a lot of men to have unrealistic expectations when it comes to sex. So
you're objectifying women by what you're looking at, and then
again, so everything objectifies women. Like, where do you draw that line? Porn, of course, objectifies women, but so does TV, so do movies, so do magazine covers, and they objectify men too. I think the only point where objectifying anyone becomes a problem is if it's being done against their will. If someone's being photographed nude in secret and those photos are being shared, that's an invasion of privacy, then that kind of objectification is wrong. But if someone is actively participating in it, what's the problem?
You're only looking at like people who are in amazing shape. And so that also creates this false fantasy and leaves
this
men,
is what I do agree with.
Not capable to engage in regular relationships. The other part I look at it, add all of this up,
for a lot of
add
people.
Everything that we up, and look at this. Hey, Pat, when you grew up, did you know the names of your neighbors across the street and on either side of you? Yes, you did. So did my mom. So did my dad. Today, I have to proactively go meet my neighbors. People usually don't know their neighbors. And it's because the American society, all of this porn and everything else has made us more...
Okay, porn has not done... Porn has been around for a long time. The access to it is easier now, but this is where I see the right drama queening a lot. A lot of these conservative people become just as big a drama queens as the ones that they make fun of for the woke stuff.
isolated people. If you ask someone, how many really close friends do you have? Do you know your neighbor across the street, what their situation is? Do you know your neighbors on either side of you?
And again, his point here is correct. I do think that we have lost our ability to some degree to interact with each other on a personal level. But I don't think that porn is the reason for that.
Would you trust one of them to take care of your dog if you're out of town? We've also become, I'm interested in what Myron thinks about this, more isolated as a people and a culture, and it's negative.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. We've seen the stats out there that men are just becoming weaker. I think testosterone levels have dropped 1% every year since the 1980s.
So this is the thing, I think, that when people like this are called misogynists, I think this is the thing that a lot of people don't understand, and that aren't, aren't straight or aren't male, is that men need these kind of strong role models in their lives. And that's why I don't think Andrew Tate is a good person. I don't think he's a good role model for the most part. But at the same time, all that gets said about Andrew Tate in the press is that he's a misogynist, women hater, when a lot of the women that he supposedly abused have come forward and said, no, I was into rough play and that's what we were into. And if you listen to Andrew Tate talk, I mean, he sounds like a douche to me a lot of times. Like, oh, look at my 5 Lambos or whatever, like you're a materialistic douchebag. But he also encourages young boys to be a man and to grow a sack and get up in the morning and discipline yourself to go get money and make a life for yourself. And I think that's a good thing, despite some of the other douchiness that the guy engages in. And so the problem with these kinds of debates is they get reduced to this black and white, like, well, you're a cis male hater of women or whatever. And it's like, no, being a man doesn't mean you hate women. And in fact, just the opposite. But there is a chemical and biological difference between men and women. And I'm not even I'm not one of those people that believes that gender is a clear cut thing, because it's definitely not. There's a lot of gray area. I have relatives who are lesbians. I grew up next door to a woman who was a very manly woman who drove a truck, and she was definitely, there was some androgyny there. There was definitely some hormonal things that, like I said, I don't think that gender is a polarity thing. I think there's definitely a lot of nuance. There's a lot of gray area with gender. That said, if you're a man and you are on that side of the spectrum, there's certain hormonal things that push you to do these kind of things. And I think these guys are having a conversation. People like this are having, I mean, the Jordan Petersons, the Andrew Tates, the people who are controversial for being misogynists. I might not agree with everything that they're saying, but I think that for the most part, they are saying good. They are a positive influence on young men.
So in the last 40 years or so, testosterone levels have dropped 40%. You've highlighted how men can't even do as much weightlifting they used to before. So look, rather than highlight all the negatives, we can go down a litany of lists of what's going on with men. What can you do to basically increase your testosterone? So you can do the natural stuff, get the fuck out of the house, work out, get some sunlight, sleep well, eat well, do what you have to do. There's also testosterone supplements that you can actually take, TRT, this type of thing.
Personally, and this is just my personal opinion, I'm a little bit older, so I'm in the demographic, but I would not take testosterone shots, supplements, anything, because your body produces that naturally. And if you're lacking in it, a lot of times it's because, like he said, you're not exercising, you're not sleeping well, you're not eating well, and just changing those things can drastically increase it without any drugs whatsoever. But the American mentality doesn't work that way. We want the shortcut. We want the pill. We want the shot. We don't want to put in the hard work that is required for the long-term benefits. It's like running a farm, like you have to put in the work to get the harvest. And a lot of people don't think like that anymore. They just want to take the pill and get the harvest.
We've actually had a recent sponsor called Turkesterone that basically helps men increase their testosterone. I think at the end of the day, you have a choice to make as a man. Do you want to kind of go down this feminization of men path, or do you want to man up and become the best version of yourself? And the men, only probably 20% of men are actually going to meet us at that point. And you all right?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
You all right? I mean, how can you disagree with that? Everything he's saying there is valid.
No. I mean, that's essentially the end of the day. And if you just basically want to get feminized in this modern femme-centric society, there's plenty of avenues for you for that. But if you want to listen to the right people and have the right people in your ear and have the right coaches and leaders and mentors around you, it is possible to be a man in today's society.
And he's not even saying that being a feminized man is a bad thing. He's just saying it's a choice that you have. So I respect that, because I'm not saying that it's a bad thing either. It's not. There's nothing wrong with being gay. There's nothing wrong with, I have very feminine qualities. I cook, I bake. I am, I was raised by my mother and a lot of strong women. So but I also, have balls and, I am sexually attracted to feminine women. So it's kind of like, it's that polarity is there for me in ways it might not be for other people. And the point I'm making here is I don't disrespect people that are different.
And this is something that I kind of get hit on a lot because, people always say, oh, Myron, you're really critical of women, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, well, you clearly don't watch the daytime show because I'm even more critical of the men. Mm-hmm. And what I've said a lot of times is we need to bring bullying back, right? And I know, oh my God, that's so controversial. The reason why I say that is because bullying is a very natural way of letting you know that you're inadequate with your peers, right? And if they tell you, hey, you're fat, or hey, you're a loser, etc. A lot of the self-improvements that I've made, right, throughout my adolescence into my adulthood came from people bullying me. And people say, oh, but it's trauma, it's bad. No, you need that. You need to be smacked in the face sometimes and learn you're not good enough right now. You need to become better. And the thing is, now we have
Chris Rock has a great bit where he says, pressure makes diamonds, and then he starts out, it's hilarious because he's like, Mark Zuckerberg made Facebook because someone hit him in the face with a book. Oh, I love Chris Rock. But that's the same point that Myron here is making, is that, pressure makes diamonds. Sometimes you need that kind of pressure to become a better person. And that's a valid point.
Participation trophy society where just by showing up, you're rewarded. And quite frankly, that's not enough. It's not about just showing up. It's about being consistent and showing up every day and doing it correct.
And let's be honest, people of color are held to much higher standards than a lot of white people are. White people have it very easy. You can call it white privilege if you want. I wouldn't call it that necessarily. It kind of is though. It's definitely the reality that I think Myron also has this perspective because he's always had to work harder as a person of color than a lot of other people have to. And he's not out here complaining about it. I'm just putting that on the table because I think I see that mentality in a lot of my non-white friends. They have, especially Hispanic people, have very strong work ethics, and it's always because it's part of their culture. They've always had to work hard and the results are always positive,
Correctly. But we live in this world nowadays where people, quite frankly, are soft, right? When I say things like, stop being, I don't want to swear, right? Because we're in the morning. Stop being a pussy, right? They're like, oh, you're misogynistic,
you're toxic,
hater,
bro.
toxic, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
No, men need trauma to grow. They need it, right? I've always said trauma builds men, but it destroys women. And the reason for that is because by the time you're old enough and you want to actually date a woman, etc., she's looking for those battle scars. She's looking for you to have that experience. She's looking for you to have beaten that adversity. She's looking for you to have made yourself into something. The only way you're going to be made into something is by going through something. Mm-hmm. And, quite frankly, we live in a society now where the guys are just soft. My brother, for example, right? Going back to the college thing that you guys were talking about before. I was at his graduation last week. I had to take a few days off to go up to Connecticut. And Southern Connecticut State University, that's where he graduated from. And during the speech, right, they were talking about being all inclusive and, oh yeah, this is a happy, harmonious campus and all this other crap. And I'm like, damn, I graduated college, 2013, about 10 years ago out of Northeastern, and they were starting to get woke back then. But now it's on a whole other level. And not only that, college campuses have become more and more expensive, right? When I went to Northeastern, it was around $40K. I think it's probably closer to $50 to $70K nowadays. So you got all these things working in tandem to, quite frankly, make men weak, right? We have this soft-ass society where we're not telling them that they need to actually go out there and achieve and become somebody. And then we also have the video games, the obesity, the mediocrity being socially accepted. Oh, it's okay, you're fine the way that you are. No, it's fucking not okay. The only people that are accepted however they come are women. not men. You must become a somebody as a man. And I think that's why our podcast becomes so popular, because we're telling guys there is a burden of performance. You have to go out there and do something. Being fat is unacceptable. Being stupid is unacceptable. Being mediocre is unacceptable. You can't be saved like a woman can for being pretty. You must get out there and become a fucking somebody. But the problem is that we don't bully the guys enough. We don't tell them that they're losers. We don't tell them that they're fat. We don't tell them that they're stupid. We need to go back to letting people know that they're inadequate, and then they'll go ahead and measure up.
I mean, all valid points. And I think, again, he said it as well, but the reason that voices like his are popular with young men is because no one's telling him that anymore. And that's something, as like the point that he made, I think that's the most valid, is women are different in that respect. As a man, if you don't make something of yourself, you're nothing, like it's there's this meme I think that sums it up so well, where it has a picture of Lizzo and everyone's like, yeah, you go girl, you're so awesome, and then it has a picture of this fat guy without a shirt on, like at a swimming pool, like, put a shirt on, you fat ass. It's like, that's the dynamic for real, and there's the reason for that, and it should be that way, and I mean it is that way, but women need that kind of support. Like he said, trauma breaks women, but it makes men. And I think that's true. If you ever watch Kill Tony, for example, a lot of it is trauma. Like, they're making fun of each other, but it's all in good fun. And it's all, Tony has this bit, if you've watched it enough, where if people get on stage and they bomb, he goes, both your parents are still together, aren't they? And 9 times out of the 10, the guy's like, yeah, I just had dinner with them like a week ago. And he's like, okay, you can't be funny unless you've experienced trauma. And if you grow up sipping cocoa at the lodge your whole life, you don't have the life experience of most of the country. You're, and that's not necessarily a bad thing either. You're just not cut out for comedy, be an accountant or something, or a doctor. But comedy probably, for the most part, ain't going to be your thing unless you've experienced some other crazy trauma that's put things into perspective to you in that light. So